Welcome back to the Tarkir Dragonstorm limited set review. In this video, I will be discussing the black cards and how good I think they're going to be. And limited, it's focused around draft, but relevant for sealed as well to a certain extent. If you have not been here before, these are the tiers that I use for my evaluations. They're a little bit different maybe than some of the other systems people use. It's the goal is to be focused around when you would take these cards, when you expect to take these cards in a pack. Um, so that's that's what's built around. Tier one's good, tier five bad. Feel free to take a look at what the tiers are loosely defined as. Here, it's not an exact science. It is not an exact science. Abzan Devotee is the first card. One out of black for a 2/1. It has the ability to have one colorless mana to add one of each of the Abzan colors. You can activate that only once each turn. You can pay 2 into black to return it from your graveyard to your hand. I'm not that excited about this. Um, I feel like it's about as it's maybe better than the blue one. It's definitely worse than the white one. Uh, the I think it's worse than the red one. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not all that interested in this. I think you're gonna play this sometimes. Mana is important, but I just don't think this is really what you want to be doing. It does kind of do the it leaves the graveyard thing, but it doesn't. That's more of a blue green thing. So I don't know how much this really plays with that type of effect. I feel like this is not really doing that super well. Um, and it's just kind of low rate, like just not that interested in this. Adorned Crocodile, 4 and a black, 5/3. When it dies, make a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token, and you can renew it for a single black to exile it from your graveyard and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. So the renew being so cheap is really nice. That really the reason I have any interest in this card is the renewability, because that's so cheap. Like you can just mill this and then you're getting a 1 mana thing to put a +1/+1 counter on something. There's a lot of things that care about having counters on them. And I think this is going to be like a kind of decent role player-y card. You can cast this for 5 and it's not terrible. Sometimes it's still not good. Like it just gets bounced and then you're really in just a nightmare scenario. You're in a blender. Um, but I think the upside of milling this and getting a reasonable thing out of it is kind of okay. I don't love this, but I think I probably will end up playing it at some point. Like it's just kind of those like really replaceable cards that you don't need, but like in a certain deck, you could be like, okay, well, the renew's there, and it does some stuff I like, but not really very excited. Aggressive Negotiations, 2 and a black sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand, you choose a non-land card from it and exile that card. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to one target creature you control. So we've seen the 3 mana versions of this effect not be that great. Although I think I should probably move this one up a bit from where it currently is. Although I'm not going to take it that high. I mean, I'm not going to take it that low either. Like I could imagine myself taking this pick 6. That's sort of a tier 3. It's supposed to be in the tier 3 range. And tier 4 cards. Supposed to wheel some, like supposed to be more interested in wheeling. This is maybe like not quite a wheel card. I don't know. I I just don't feel like this is a premium card. It's not Torment of Golem, it's not whatever. You need to have a creature in play to have the counter on it, which you're gonna want to do anyway, but this is not a creature. And typically the versions of this that don't give you a thing on the board, like no questions asked, tend to be a lot worse than the ones that give you something on the board, like no matter what. But I don't think this is horrible. I just think that there's better things to be doing. There's better ways to get counters on your things, and there's better ways to do this. Alchemist's Assistant, 1 and a black for a 2/1 with lifelink. It has renew for 1 and a black, and you can exile it and put a lifelink counter or from your graveyard and put a lifelink counter on target creature as a sorcery. So there are things that care about how many different types of counters you have on things. Not a ton of them, but there are some. A lifelink counter is just good. Just free effective, like, hey, give this thing lifelink. Even if you only do it for one turn, like you put the lifelink counter on it and then it just dies, you get the one turn of having a lifelink counter. That's pretty good. And a 2 mana 2/1 lifelink wears counters really well, like +1/+1 counters really well. So I imagine this will be pretty good. Just like lifelink, doesn't block very well, but I I think it's kind of okay. The There are some 1/3s running around that kind of brick this, but if you do have ways to put counters on things, and there are plenty of those, I think this will be pretty good in those decks that care about counters. And even in just a normal black deck, I think you're going to be pretty okay with it. Alicia's Legacy, 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature you control gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. So this is a strict downgrade from the one we had last set, which gave a +1/+1 counter. And the +1/+1 counter is really important. It really bumps it up significantly in terms of its usability. This is a lot worse, especially in a set that cares about counters. I really wish they'd just run it back. Made that printed down one again. It would have been. I don't think it would have been too good. I think it would have been good. I don't think it would have been too good. Kind of wish we'd just run it back. So, yeah. These type of tricks tend not to be very good unless they give you some type of lasting effect, and this one does not. Avenger of the Fallen. 2 to black, 2/4, Death Touch, Mobilize X, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. So this needs some enabling, right? You gotta have a lot of creatures in your deck. You gotta be putting them in your graveyard somehow. There are ways to do that. Is black the best? Actually, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it comes up. I mean, this is just a good rate, right? So 3 mana, 2/4 Death Touch. That's pretty good. Like, you're already pretty happy about that. And yeah, maybe you're not gonna mobilize a lot all the time, but the times that you mobilize like 2 or 3, like, you're gonna be happy. So I don't think this is bad. I'm not. There's not a whole lot to hate about this card. So it seems good, but not like gonna just take over the game by itself. Caustic Exhale. Single black instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, behold a dragon or pay 1. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. So a -3/-3 effect for 2 mana is usually a tier 2 card. It sort of fluctuates between tier 2 and tier 3, usually closer to tier 2. I'm gonna say that there's enough dragons in the set that this being 1 mana happens 50% of the time that you cast it, and if that's the case, its efficiency is much better. 1 is just so much less than 2. It really can't be understated how true that is. To cast your removal spells for 1 mana is very strong, and to cast them for 2 mana is still good, but it's half as good. So it's twice as good when you have a dragon in your hand. You are going to have dragons in your hand at a reasonable frequency. Like, I think highly reasonable. This is one of the ones that plays better with the dragons because you care more about this costing 1 on like turn 3, right? Where like you want your removal to be efficient earlier in the game and you can't cast your dragons earlier in the game, so this one actually sort of plays well with the beholding. Whereas the blue counterspell, there's a little bit of tension. It's still great later on, but there's a little bit of tension of like, well, do I really want to be holding a dragon in my hand? Yeah. So this just looks great to me. This just looks strong. Corroding Dragonstorm, 1 in a black enchantment. When this enchantment enters, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life, and you surveil 2. And when a dragon you control enters, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. So this looks okay. The base rate up front is 2 mana, drain your opponent for 2, surveil 2. How good is that? It's not great. It's not great. It's really not. But I think, again, there are going to be enough dragons, and if you start doing this like multiple times, I don't feel as bad about it. It's not. It kind of has some of the similar problems to like the blue one, where I'm like, do I love this? Like, I'm not gonna take this that high, but if I had 6 dragons, would I be excited about it? I'd be pretty excited. Like, if you get 1 extra instance of this, you're pretty happy about it in the mid to late game. And this is like not a bad top deck and whatever. I think it's fine. I think these largely are fine, and I like this one, but I don't love it as much as some of the other ones. Like, again, I think my favorite are the green and the white one. this one, it's okay. I think it's okay. Cruel Truths. 3 and a black, instant. Surveil 2, then you draw 2 cards, you lose 2 life. So, we've had this effect before. 4 mana, Surveil 2, draw 2, I think? We've had, well, the 4C is a card. I think that was a sorcerer. I have to go, I don't remember. That's a blue card. It's losing 2 life on your draw spell for 4 is bad. I think tier 5 is a bit harsh. I think that's a bit harsh. There are a ton of ways to get card advantage in this set, so I do think, do you really need this? Probably not. Like, black doesn't really care about spells that much, and this is like you'd kind of rather this just be like a creature, right? Like in your deck, in your black deck, I think you're gonna be happier just having more creatures than this type of effect. I'm like, I will move it up to tier 4, but I'm still not excited about it. So yeah, there it is, up to tier 4. Because it's a reasonable draw spell. The rate's not too bad. Losing 2 life is bad though. Losing 2 life very bad. But the instant speed, you do get to look at 4 cards, put stuff in your graveyard. So I'll have to give it I'm giving it a little bit of respect. It's getting respected. Delta Blood Flies, 1 on it black for a 1/2 with flying. When it attacks, if you control a creature with a counter on it, each opponent loses 1 life. So when I first read this card, I was like, this is bad, this isn't very good, whatever, who cares? But then I sort of looked at more of the set, and I was like, no, you know what? I'm actually kind of like this. There's a lot of ways to give counters to things. There's just a lot of them. Enough to where I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, I could see a reasonable number of games where this is on like you just want something like this where it's a cheap flyer to wear counters, and this is annoying. Like it hits for 2 on 2 as a flyer, or on 3 as a flyer. It's pretty good. Like that's 2 damage a turn, and this thing's going to be really annoying. Does it block well? Absolutely not. I mean, it can block the mobilized tokens, which is probably enough of a. That's probably enough. Like that's just enough, I think, blocking for it to be sort of doing its job. And again, it wears the counters really well. It's a 2-drop. Kind of who knows? Who knows what the Del? I could see it working out. Now, it is going to depend on how good the counter decks are, right? Like if Abzan just turns out to be unplayable, this thing's going to be bad. But I think there's going to be room for it, and I'm here for the Delta Bloodflies. I'm here for them. I'm respecting them. I'm showing them respect. Desperate Measures, single black, instant. Target creature gets +1/-1 until end of turn. When it dies under your control this turn, draw 2 cards. So this is like a weird Village Rites. It works with the tokens. It works with the mobilized tokens. It works to like trade up with stuff. But it's like, how often are you actually going to trade up with something? Less than you think, I would guess. I think this is mostly a Village Rites. So that's where I have it. Um, I have it down in tier 4, which is where I would put a Village Rites. That's kind of what I see this as. I think it might even be worse than Village. Like you could think about the upside of trading up for something, but you could also think about the downside of, oh, I want to cast my Village Rites into my opponent's removal spell, and it doesn't work on like the exile or bounce removal because it doesn't die. You know what I mean? Like there's the downside there too. So I don't love this. But it does have like a little extra added flexibility of, oh, pick off your opponent's X1. There are 2-drops that have 1 toughness. I don't know. It kind of reads as really flexible, but we've kind of seen these sort of +1/-1 cards just not really be good enough lately. Like they've kind of had like a bad run. So I'm gonna start low and we'll move up as things progress here, if necessary. Dragon's Prey. 2 to black, instant. The spell costs 2 more to cast if it targets a dragon. Destroy target creature. So a lot of the things you're going to want to be killing are dragons, which is a problem. I'm putting this in the same tier as I normally put like a murder. It's better because it doesn't cost double black, which is great. Unfortunately, the things you want to be killing are dragons. So that's a problem. That's not great for a fellow like me, for a guy like me. I don't love that for a guy like me. but I think it's fine. It's fine. I'm not excited about it. I don't know. I'm not hating it either. Feral Deathgorger, 5 and a black, 3/5, flying death touch. When it enters, exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. It has a Dusk Sight for it. There's 1 and a black sorcery omen. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature, draw a card. I really like this as kind of like a nice little role player. All of the this is so this cycle of dragons. My favorite is maybe the green and white one are like tied at 1. They're my two favorites. This one's probably in my like second tier. The blue one is my least favorite. I don't remember what the red one is, which probably is a bad sign for that one. But yeah, I like this. All of these, I like these designs for all of them. Um, so I don't really have any complaints about this card. It seems decent. The back end of it, the 6-drop dragon seems a little expensive for what you're getting, but I think you're gonna cast that pretty frequently. And just putting the counter on something and drawing a card seems like, again, you do that. You go blood flies into this, and think about that. That's pretty good, you know. So I don't mind it. Gerbag Rakshasa, 4 black 5/5 menace. When this creature enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So this is reminiscent of Wix Patrol. Wix Patrol ended up being like a tier 1 card. So this is an interesting, like, do I think this is better? I'm rating it as worse than Wix Patrol. And the reason I'm doing that is Wix Patrol killed the thing dead. It killed it dead. Like, you killed your opponent's thing every time. This is more like make the thing better to attack with. This is also a bigger creature, but I don't know how much that matters. Like, I don't know how much it matters that this is a 5/5 menace. I don't know. It's really good. Whether it's tier 2 or tier 1 is like semantical. I think it's probably closer to tier 1 in this set because it's a 3-color set, but this is double black. No, but I also wonder, like, if the creatures are going to be a little bit larger, how much does -2/-2 matter? It always matters. Like, it always matters. And getting an attack in, like, even if it doesn't kill the thing, it still means that you get to attack with something that you may not otherwise have gotten to attack with. Like, how good is like 5 mana 4/4? Give something -2/-2. That's pretty good. Like, that's pretty dang. No, I'm move it back up. I'm gonna move it back up. It's back up. It's back up at the top. I just think, I don't know. I think this is relevant at any point of the game that you can cast it. I have a hard time imagining. Again, it is like powerful monocolor cards are really where you want to start your draft in this type of set, and like this is just like really that. This is really that. Um, yeah. 100 Battle Veteran, 3 and a black, 4/2. As long as there are 3 or more different kinds of counters among creatures you control, this creature gets +2/+4, so it becomes a 6/6. You may cast it from your graveyard. If you do, it enters with a finality counter on it. So up front, it's pretty bad. 4 mana, 4/2, but then, you get to cast it from your graveyard with a finality counter if you mill it, which is great. How often is this going to be on? More often than you would think, especially when it's on the finality counter side. You only need +1/+1 and one other type. The one other type, it's going to be tricky. There's going to be some games where it's like some decks where it's doable and some decks where it's not. I don't think this is a super high priority because the decks where it's not that good or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, a 4-drop that you can cast from your graveyard seems like a fine card in a set that cares a lot about the graveyard. So I think you probably are happy with this, but probably not super jazzed. Like, I'm not pack one pick oneing this ever. I don't think. I just don't think I'm doing that. I think in the right deck, it's going to be great or good. Even I don't know if great's the right word. It'll be at least good. But I don't think a 4-drop. I really want to be pack one pick oneing, but the value is there. The value is there on the back side of it as well. Kin Tree Nurturer. 2 and a black, 2/1, lifelink. When it dies, it endures. Oh, when it enters, it endures 1. That's a big difference. I did know that it entered and endured 1, but these guys they've been falling off lately. I'll tell you what, brother. the 3 mana thing that makes 2 bodies, it's been beat lately. Like it has been. It's just not been good. It's been bad for. It's basically taken. It's been about taken about a year off of being good. Um, which is kind of brutal. It's kind of brutal. This one though is it's got lifelink. That's good. Makes a couple 1/1s. You could put the counter on it. I don't really think you ever want to do that, but I can imagine a scenario. Like I can imagine a world in which you did. It would kind of be like a post board thing, like post sideboard. You're like, oh, my opponent doesn't really have like a ton of like interaction. I guess I don't know. I'm sure there's a spot where you're gonna do it, but it's gonna be rare. But yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable. Reasonable 3 drop, but not exciting. Krumar Initiate, 1 and a black, 2/2. He has the ability X and a black and tap to pay X life. This creature endures X. Activate only as a sorcery. So this is a really expensive thing, right? If you paid, like, you have to pay like 5 mana, make a 4/4, pay 5 life. Oh no, you're paying 4 life, sorry. Make a 4/4, pay 4. I mean, that's good. Like, this is good when it does the thing. The problem is, if you put yourself at 12 and then your opponent plays a creature with flying, it's like, oh, that could be a problem. You know what I mean? Like that's the type, and you have to do it as a sorcery, so you're tapped out, and then this is tapped. So if your opponent has like a removal spell, it like bounces the thing, and then you just take 8, and then you're at 6, and you're just sitting there like, well, my 2 drop killed me. Like this is gonna lose a lot of people a lot of games. But I don't think I think that functional, like its win rate is going to be indicative of something that is maybe tier 5 worthy. I think that it's better than that if you don't use it poorly because it's just a 2 mana 2/2, which with an ability on it, which is usually kind of enough to just be tier 4. So that's kind of what I've rated it here on. Is like you can play this and it's not like you don't insta lose when you cast it, but you do probably like unless you really know what you're doing, activating this is asking to lose the game. In a lot of spots. Nightblade Brigade. 2 to black, 1/3, Death Touch, Mobilize 1. When it enters, Surveil 1. Just kind of a lot of reasonability here. Just kind of reasonable. A lot of, you know, I don't know. There's kind of a lot to be interested in here. ETB Surveil 1. That's a little taste. Death Touch on your 3 drop. It's got 3 toughness, which isn't the most, but it's not the least either. It's hard for your opponent to attack into. It attacks as with 2 power. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. This, like, is this maybe better than this thing? Maybe. I could believe that. In some formats, I could believe that. 2 years ago, I would never have believed you, but now I'm kind of like, maybe. So, yeah. I don't love this, but I like it enough to think that it's gonna see some reasonable amount of play. I probably should move it down. I mean, it gets the surveil. The surveil is her. It's doing enough. It's doing enough for me. The surveil is doing enough for me. Karsai Revenant. 1 black black, 3/3, flying, death touch, lifelink. It has renew for 2 and a black. Exile this card from your graveyard, put a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a lifelink counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. This obviously is completely broken. It's Vampire Nighthawk with an additional point of power and a graveyard ability. I don't really have a lot to say about this. It's sick. It's very good. I don't know. Now, like we know this thing's great, so I don't have a lot to say about it. This one's much more interesting. Rot Curse Rakshasha. I can't with the K's, dude. I keep putting K's in words. 1 and a black, 5/5, trample, decayed. As renew for X black black. Exile this card from your graveyard, put a decayed counter on each of X target creatures, activate only as a sorcery. So this is one of those ones where I'm gonna be wrong no matter how I grade it. Like I'm just gonna be wrong. Somehow I'm gonna find a way to get this one wrong. So 2 mana 5/5 with Decayed, which means that after it attacks, it just gets sacrificed. But I mean, think about that, right? So on turn 2, you play this, and then you swing on your next turn. Opponent's like, all right, I'll take it. I'll take 5. Go down to 15. So opponent's starting the game at 15. That's not bad for you. And then late, like on turn 4, you can go, all right, I'm going to pay X black black and then make 2 of their creatures decayed. The decayed creatures can't block the turn that you do this, and they only get one more attack. So it's like, I mean, that's, you're essentially getting at, like this is a really sweet, like aggro-y type card, right? Because you're getting the 5 damage because your opponent's never going to block it, probably. And then later on in the game, you get a removal, like you just get to go X creatures can't block this turn, and then also those creatures. You can put it on your own creatures if you do care about like token stuff. You can be like, all right, well, I want my thing to die and whatever. I tier 1 may be a bit aggressive. Like this might be too much. I just think this is going to be such a nightmare to play against. Like you just it comes down on turn 2 on the draw, and then you're like, well, I guess I'm taking 5, and then my opponent's going to play a 3-drop, and they have a 3-drop in play, and I'm just sitting here and I play 3, and then it's like, I mean, I guess I have a 3 and a 2 against a 3, and then maybe it's going to be easier for me to block, but then on turn 4 they could just go move my 2 things and then hit me. Like it puts you in this weird spot where you kind of like have to race your opponent, right? Because they're like, well, I'm threatening to make it so your creatures can't block. But then they don't have to use it if you try to race them. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I think tier 1 is probably like a bit aggressive. It's definitely not as good as this card, right? Like this card way better. Way better than this card. So if this card is way better than this card, I should probably put it down a tier. But I mean, if you just the thing is, another one's just if you just mill this card, I mean, just a lot of value. Just a lot of value. And like, yeah, it can't block on 2. I mean, sometimes you gotta block. I guess sometimes you gotta block. You know what? I'll move it down a tier. Sometimes you just gotta block. Sometimes you just have to block. I do really like this card. It may end up disappointing me. Like this is one of those cards that again, like could just be totally wrong on this one. Wouldn't feel too bad if I was. Salt Road Skirmish, 3 and a black. Sorcery. Destroy target creature, create 2 1/1 red warrior creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. So 4 mana, remove something, and make 2 tokens. How good is that? It would be great if it was an instant. It would be really good if that was an instant. It's not an instant, though. It's sorcery speed removal. And, you know, like, how relevant are the 1/1s? Like, it's kind of like, you know, the best case scenario really is like you spend 4 mana, kill their thing, and then you deal 2 damage to your opponent. How good is that? It's fine. It's okay. It's a sorcery. I don't. I think this is probably gonna get overhyped. I just don't. I don't know. I'm just not. I'm not. I'm concerned about this card. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about it. Sand Skitter Outrider. 3 and a black. 2/1 menace. When this enters, it endures 2. It makes. So yeah. I put this in tier 2 because we've seen like this, not quite this exact card. But the 2/2 in MKM that just made another 2/2 for 4, like that just has been really good for a really long time. To like make 2/2s for 4. Card obviously this makes a menace 2/1, just probably better than a second 2/2 on average, I would guess. Like I think you would rather have a 2/1 with menace and a 2/2 than 2 2/2s. That would be my thought process. I don't know. I like it. I like this card. Is tier 2 maybe a bit high? Maybe. Like I'll believe you if you say that's true. I don't know. I just kind of like it. It's just kind of it, it does feel, and like sometimes you make a 4/3 menace, but you probably shouldn't ever actually make a 4/3 menace. Like don't do that. But sometimes you do it, but don't do it. Don't never do it. But sometimes you should don't ever do it. Scavenger Regent. 3 to black, 4/4 flying, ward, discard a card. It's a dragon. And it has an omen for X black black. Each non-dragon creature gets -X until end of turn. So I don't really care so much about the omen, but like when it comes up, you're gonna be really thrilled you have it. I mean, 4 mana, 4/4 flying, ward, discard a card. That's just really good. And then the fact that you like that would be a tier 2 card, right? So that right there is a tier 2 card. As a result of that, I'm bumping it up a tier because it has an extra mode that sometimes you cast and is great. Um, and that's why it's here. There's really not a whole like long explanation about it. Dragons are also good. The Sibsig Ceremony, black, 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 legendary enchantment. Creature spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. Whenever a creature you control enters, if you cast it, destroy that creature, then create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. You could try to make this work. It's just if this cost 2 in a black, it would be interesting. The fact that it costs triple black is just a complete in a 3-color set is just a hard no. That is a hard no. I am not interested. I'm good. I'm actually good. I don't need it, you know. That's kind of that's the way, you know. Sidisi, Regent of the Mire. 1 in a black, 1/3. Tap it to sacrifice a creature you control with mana value X other than Sidisi. Return target creature. Card with mana value X plus 1 from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. This is really, really weird. But these type of effects tend to just like never work exactly the way you want when you want them. Like it just kind of is like, oh, well, I want to get my 4-drop, but I only have 2 drops in play. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, and the base rate's pretty bad. It's cool when it works, but it's a lot of the game for a large portion of the game. It's a 2 mana 1/3. That scares me. The fact, I mean, obviously you'd have to only allow this as a sorcery. Um, but yeah, it just kind of like is weird, and I don't really like it. So kind of, I'm gonna probably end up trying this at some point, and it'll be fine. But I don't think it's like it's threatening in some ways, but it's like, is it threatening? Is it actually threatening me? Probably not. Sinkhole Surveyor. 1 and a black for a 1/3 flying. Whenever this creature attacks, you lose 1 life, and this creature endures 1. Yeah, I mean, this looks sweet, right? So 2 mana, 1/3 flyer. When it attacks, you lose 1 life and make a 1/1 token, or you can make it a 2/4 immediately, like put counters on it. It's just a great 2-drop. It goes in every deck. There's nothing to dislike about this. It's just strong. It's just a powerful card. Don't don't have a lot to dislike. Obviously, you can nitpick on, oh, is this really tier 1? Whatever. I don't. It's 2-drop. I'm gonna take it high. Strategic Betrayal. 1 in a black sorcery. Target opponent exiles a creature they control and their graveyard. So I put this in tier 3. I probably should move it back down, actually. It is just a edict, but it is exile. Exile matters. Exile in the graveyards, I think, matters a lot. I think it matters like a lot. But the problem is, does it matter a lot on when you're gonna actually cast this, which is turn 2? I'll move it back down. Like it is truly savage against some decks. Like you draw this on like turn 5 against Teamer. Sometimes you kill their 5/5 and then also exile all their harmonized spells, and they like lose the game. But I, I think a lot of times it's gonna kind of be somewhat underwhelming. Edicts just aren't, and there's a lot of tokens. I think this might just be completely unplayable, but we'll see how the format develops. Unburied Earthcarver. 1 in a black, 2/2. You can pay 2 to sacrifice another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Yeah, it looks pretty decent. Looks like a decent, again, a lot of tokens I just talked about. All the mobilized stuff this works with. It's a solid 2-drop. It's one of the few 2-drops that has 2 toughness. I mean, it's not one of the few, but it's like one of the ones that can scale with the game, which there's not that many of them. And it's just a nice little place to put your mana, right? It's a nice place to. It's a threat of activation at times. Like this can attack with the mobilized tokens. Then you like put your opponent in these weird spots. Yeah, I like it. I don't love it, but I like it. Similarly, Unrooted Ancestor, 2 in a black, 3/2 with flash. You can pay 1 colorless to sacrifice another creature, and this creature gets indestructible until end of turn, and you tap it. Yeah, I mean, this looks fine. 3 mana 3/2 flash is a pretty bad rate, but 4 mana 3/2 flash, sacrifice like a token indestructible, could be something. And yeah, just the problem is it just needs a little bit of help. it is annoying to deal with, but the -3/-3 exists, and there's always ways to like make these worse than they kind of read. So I'm not loving it, but I don't hate it. Venerated Stormsinger. 3 and a black, 3/3, mobilize 1. When this creature or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. It's just, I mean, it's good with mobilize stuff. It's just 4 mana for 3/3. It's just 4 mana for 3/3 is kind of the problem. That's the problem, is that it's 4 mana and it is a 3/3. I just, it's great when it does the thing. It's great, but when it doesn't do the thing, it's really bad. It's really really bad, and yeah, I think this in a lot of games is just going to come down, and your opponent's going to go, great, attack you with my 4/4, and you're taking 6 now. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's a bad spot. It's a bad spot to be. Whale of War, 2 and a black, instant. Choose 1. Creatures target opponent controls get -1/-1 until end of turn, and you can return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Yeah. I mean, the fact that this is an instant is kind of sweet, and like usually with these return spells, you don't get them at instant speed, which is it makes them a lot better. Similarly, like this one, you can like be like, all right, well, I'm in combat, and if the combat goes okay for me, I can cast this. Like if the combat's gonna go really bad for me, I can cast the front side of this. If we just trade off, then I can just cast the back side of it. Like that's kind of a thing that can happen. Like I don't know, there's just a lot of ways to use this, and I think this is gonna be really strong. The question is, do I put it in tier 2? And it's like the effects are still a little bit on the niche side for me to I think put it up to tier 2. But I think this is gonna be good enough to be in your main deck every time. Worthy cost. Single black sorcery is additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, exile target creature or planeswalker. So we just had this in Duskmourn, and that allowed you to sacrifice enchantments, which was really why the card was so good, is that you wanted to sacrifice your enchantments. This one, you can't do that. But it does still have the thing where it exiles. Exile is very, very important. Really important. And there are a lot of tokens, like in white, black, a little bit in red too. I think there's enough that this is going to be pretty decent. A lot of sort of tier 3 cards in black where I'm like, yeah, these are all sort of interchangeable and you can sort of like make them all work, but I'm not excited about any of them. This is sort of another spot with that card. And the last black card, Yathan Tombguard. 2 and a black, 2/3, menace. Whenever a creature you control with a counter on it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So 3-mana 2/3 menace. It's like kinda sneaky good. It's not great, but it's kinda sneaky okay. And there's enough ways to have stuff with counters on it that this is going to be on frequently. And again, you put one counter on this, which is not impossible, and you get in once, you're going to be thrilled. Is that super easy to do? No. That's why it's in tier 3 and not tier 2. But I think, again, there's kind of a bunch of these like black cards. It's like, yeah, I mean, I think in the right deck this is good, but you're just not going to take it super, super high. And this is kind of another one of those where it's like, am I thrilled about it? No. But is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. So I don't mind it. And that's it. That is it for the black cards in Tarkir Dragonstorm. So feel free to check out the other set review videos. I appreciate any support with that. I'll see you.